This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Jamal.
And I'm Jamal Dejani.
Jamal, we've come to the end of another year, 2022. We're going to do our end of the year special, wrapping up a lot of different main stories that we covered this year and also giving some predictions for 2023. We're going to talk about the big one of the big stories, obviously, is the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the humanitarian crises that are deepening there. We're going to talk about the economic crisis around inflation and recession that is gripping the United States and the rest of the world. We're also going to talk about the election, and this is hard to believe when we say this, yet the most racist, Islamophobic, and hateful Israeli government ever elected, which is hard to believe given the history of its apartheid practices. And we're going to talk about global warming, as well as the radical U.S. Supreme Court and some of their decisions to take away rights, constitutional rights from women in this country. But before we get to that, I know it's a lot, we're going to watch an interview that you did with Miss Palestine, Earth and Water. This is Nadeen Ayoub, who's crowned Miss Palestine. This is the first time someone from Palestine has been ranked in one of the big four pageants: Miss World, Miss Universe, Miss International, and Miss Earth. She really sees this as an opportunity to represent Palestine, Palestinian culture, artists, and designers globally. It's a really great interview.
Yeah, it's absolutely a great interview. She has a big role to play. And I should just caution our listeners and viewers that we are speaking on 3 different continents. So the quality of audio might not be the best when we are in the studio, but you are in the United States and I'm in Europe, and I spoke to Miss Palestine, Miss Earth, Water, and she was in Qatar, so which is in Asia, for those who don't know some of the geography here. Anyway, let's watch Nadeen Ayoub.
Miss Universe, Miss World, Miss International, and Miss Earth. These are the alpha pageants, or sometimes called the Big Four. Each has its own crown, each its own cause it advocates for. Miss Earth promotes environmental awareness and protection. In a groundbreaking first, Miss Palestine Nadeen Ayoub was crowned Miss Earth, Water in 2022. She is the first Palestinian to rank in any of the Big Four. Joining us on Arab Talk this week is Nadeen Ayoub. Nadeen is a model and fitness trainer from Ramallah. She had no pageant experience before competing in Miss Earth, but saw it as an opportunity to represent Palestinian culture, artists, and designers globally. She was crowned Miss Earth, Water. Nadeen, welcome to Arab Talk.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
First, let me congratulate you for being the first Palestinian contestant to rank in one of the Alpha pageants. This is amazing, really. And to be queen championing environment causes makes it that much more special. Nadeen, you are Miss Earth, Water 22. Tell us about Miss Earth. What is involved in participating in the competition for one of the crowns?
Okay. So Miss Earth, of course, any beauty competition, or, I like to call it nowadays, beauty competitions have become more about advocacies and about humanitarian causes, as women have developed and made their role in the world. So has what we call beauty competitions. And Miss Earth really focuses on environmental advocacy, so raising awareness about climate change and the climate crisis. And they want their delegates or their beauty queens to focus and use their power and their role to educate their societies and communities about environmental protection and its importance. So each of us had to have an advocacy, and I'll explain to you more about my advocacy and what I did during my my Miss Earth journey and till now.
Yeah. So if you had to say something like one thing or two things, what distinguishes Miss Earth from other pageants, what would you say?
The focus on environmental protection, and also they are the most difficult, or one of the most difficult, I guess, competitions to win, because during the competition, especially the in-person one, you're going from island to island, and you're in nature, and you have to be able to be in nature and do these activities, and it's like a full schedule, all day schedule, going even to conferences and talking about the environment and being a spokesperson. So you have to show that you're able to be a speaker and an environmental advocate, and at the same time, of course, you have like the beauty queen aspect, the look. So I think it's difficult in that way, but it's also very relevant in today's world where the climate crisis is becoming worse.
Yeah, so I actually talk about this criteria. One of the criteria that makes pageant one of the big four is the relevance of its cause. Do you think environmental awareness has raised the profile of Miss Earth? I mean, do you think that this is really one item that raised its profile?
Definitely raised its profile, because these days, especially, everything is about, or there's a lot of campaigns and there's a lot of organizations with the focus of environmental protection because of global warming and where the world is headed. And I think in today's world, it's even more relevant. So definitely, I think that beauty competitions in general, when we say beauty, it's not about beauty as in just physical beauty of a woman. It's about the beauty that she brings to her world, to her community, the beauty that she shows about her culture and her country. So when we use the word beauty, it's a beauty of many things. It's not only looks.
Were you involved in environmental causes before this pageant? In other words, was this a prerequisite for entering the Miss Earth pageant, or did the pageant raise your awareness?
It wasn't necessarily a prerequisite. I think that at least like the prerequisite was the delegates to have a cause and to have a love for the environment, and to at least have some type of connection to these types of causes. Like for me, as a nutrition consultant, fitness instructor, and even as a Palestinian, our culture, we're very close to the land, and actually it's a huge part of our culture. It's the main themes of Palestinian culture is actually nature. And I think that whether I got elected to be in Miss Earth or not, I am an environmentalist, just being a Palestinian. So I think it's a prerequisite in that at least you have the wanting to care and you're on that track. And I think with Miss Earth, I use the platform to raise more awareness, or to start campaigns in Palestine about environmental protection.
Actually, this was like my second question, because this is a segue to the Palestinian society. As you've mentioned, historically, Palestine society was always close to the land, farming, art, the trees. That's another.
Even
on environmentally sustainable practices. Talk to us about that.
Definitely, that's something actually that I had to speak about in the intelligence and Q&A round online, which you can also see on Instagram. A lot of people, they see the my walk on stage or the photo shoots and stuff, but there's actually a lot of the competition that has to do with Q&A and these types of questions. And my answer, so there was this, the Q&A judge, and they asked me, being Palestinian, with the situation and the political situation, how how are they able, or how are you able to convince them to care about the environment, because they may have other things that are on their mind. And my answer, was actually being Palestinian before anything is being an environmentalist. We are in essence environmentalists as indigenous people of the land. So we actually hold indigenous values related to the land. So for example, we have been practicing agriculture since a long time ago, since we our ancestors have practiced that. 80,000 families rely on olive trees to live and to get an income. We are a farming society. And I think I told him, for me, it's actually about encouraging Palestinians to stay holding on to these roots, because with the Industrial Revolution and cities and all, people are starting to be more, to let go of this farming and go into more industrialized societies. But I like to encourage Palestinians to stay holding on to their love for the land. And they are. But it's so important to keep that. And the fact of the matter is, we love our land, and we see this in themes of literature, our history, our art. It's always there. And even our cuisine, where it's so related to the land. It's not like we just eat, right? Like a Palestinian dish. It's not like it's there and we eat it. We literally know, like, okay, this this plant came from here, and the reason why we use this ingredient is because of this. We're very in touch with nature.
Right, especially now we live in such a disposable world. I mentioned earlier Tatriz, aside for our listeners who don't know what Tatriz, that's embroidery. Every town, every village has its own design for their dresses. But this is reusable, because women in Palestine, they keep their grandmothers' dresses and so forth, and they reuse them for weddings and other occasions. And we live in a society now, you buy something, you wear it for a couple of months, 2-3 months, and you toss it away.
Definitely. I actually, I had to bring an auction item with me to Miss Earth. And what I did is I got a frame, and I had Tatriz in it to represent nature, to represent our love for nature, because as you said, the colors, the type of even material that we use depends on the resources around us. So, back then, the reason why certain colors were related to certain villages was because of the environment, because that was those were the resources available. And so that by itself is a type of sustainable fashion. And I explained, and I had to, give them a note and explain all of this to them. And I told them, when Arab women did this, it was also a self-expression, and it was their way to be part of history, to pass down or to show the world that they can also be a part of giving to their family. They have talents, and it's really a way of expression.
Take us back to Miss Palestine. So, of course, before you entered this pageant and you became Miss Palestine, what took you there?
So we have to keep in mind that in order to be, a Miss Palestine, like Jamal Palestine, you have to enter in these 4 competitions. Like, there has to be a possibility to go to either Miss Earth, World, Universe, or international. Like, those are the big 4. And what happened was, throughout the years, a lot of Palestinian girls were applying to the organization, and a lot of the times they didn't have the certain requirements, certain standards, because being Palestinian, it's so hard, because, okay, you have to be able to be in Palestine. At the same time, you need to be able to travel, and there's just a lot of requirements that I can't say everything here, but I think once I went to Miss Europe Continental and I got in top 5, they really wanted me to apply to be Miss Palestine. And because I had the requirements, I won. And this has actually been a process since 2016. So finally, they allowed Palestine to be represented in these big 4 pageants.
What has your support from Palestine been like?
I've had a lot of supporters. Of course, there's always going to be like no matter what, no matter where I'm from, there's going to be criticism and there's going to be positivity, but I've been getting more positivity and support and a lot of proud Palestinians. I don't think they expected a win, to be honest. I think for them that was huge because it's an international competition and it's extremely hard to win. It's the hardest, actually, as I said, it's the hardest beauty competition to win. And even me, I was like, wow, did this really happen, right? Because I was standing with very strong contenders, very strong countries that are ranking like they've won before. Right. So for me to be standing there with Palestine on my sash, I'm like, I'm very happy because I worked hard. I worked very, very hard for months, and I knew that the weight of me winning has to be all on me. It has to be me, Nadeen, pulling Palestine to get to that place. So I was, super proud and exhausted, but very happy.
So now you, as a first, you are such an inspiration to others. How important is being a role model to young Palestinian girls and women?
Very important to me. I think that's something that one of the main things that inspires me. And that's why, for me, as I said, beauty compositions is showing the beauty of your people. It's how you can make a positive impact on the humanitarian aspects in the world, and not only looks. Of course, we're us women, let's be honest, we love to look good. We love to take photos, and all of that. And we love the glam and everything. But we are also nurturing. Women are nurturing, and not just, we don't just physically be able to look good, but we also are able to help our communities. And so for me, that's how I want to inspire young girls. And I want to inspire them by showing them that no matter what obstacles are in your way, being Palestinian or whatever, you can do it. You have the strength to be able to get there. And I think if every Palestinian woman and women in the world, I want to be a role model for all girls in the world. If you put your mind to it, you're going to achieve it.
You chose not to talk or to take you chose to take a non-political role, and you can't mention the word Palestine without politics being inserted in that. Everyone that Palestinians live under a harsh occupation. And you talked about even travel. Many Palestinians cannot even travel. They cannot even leave the country.
Yes, a lot of Palestinians not.
So how do you navigate?
So for me, I was speaking yesterday about why, for me, my role is not a political one. And it's because I see the media and the Palestinian media in general as a team. And I think that there's pages and there's platforms where like yourself and a lot of other Palestinian political platforms where they speak about these things and these the political circumstances in Palestine. That is so important and it has to happen. But also, we also have to have pages that show other sides, the beauty of Palestine and how we can relate to the world outside, because there has to be a balance in order for the message to be as impactful and powerful. Not every page has to talk about everything, right? If that happens, then the message will get lost in translation to the world. For example, my platform is to show the culture, the beauty, the fashion, the talents that we have in Palestine. And that's what I want my message to be. And I see the media and social media and all other influencers with me as a team, and that's my role. I want the world to actually know the Palestinian identity outside of the politics and the suffering that we're facing. I want to humanize, and I want to show them the human side, because that's how I feel they will relate and sympathize. There has to be a balance. And I see now there's a lot of Palestinian artists out there, and that's what they're focused on. That's what their page is. It's their music or their art or whatever. And I think that balanced with the media that's about the politics is what's going to make the message stronger.
Absolutely. And you're such also great representative for
Thank you.
culture and art. I have to ask, does the pageant give you resources and support for projects, for example, individuals with expertise or like wildlife conservation,
Yes.
waste, etc.?
Yes, they do. They definitely connect us. And, I've made so many connections through Miss Earth. And, my reign, what we call it is I'm Miss Earth. I'm Miss Earth Elemental title holder for a year. And during this year, I will have a lot of different conferences. I'll travel. There's going to be a lot of events happening, of course, with them and with other organizations. Like for me, I really want to also connect with Palestinian organizations that are about humanitarian causes or environment. And it's already happening. I've connected to many organizations, and I will be working with them as well.
That's great. Well, you are a queen now. So I have to ask you about your crown. You take it with you wherever you go.
I asked that because, actually, a lot of my fans, especially my Filipino fans, are asking me, why don't you wear your crown? Like, they want me to wear it. So I'm going to show you. Yes, I do carry it, but it's very safe. I'll show you. Give me 1 second. So, this is the water crown because there are 4 winners, 4 elements. And, it's, you guys will see me now in my queenly phase. Here it is.
Yeah, right. Nadeen.
I wear my sash as well, but here's the crown.
Nadeen, thank you for all the important work you do to make the world a better place in the future, to make every Palestinian and actually everyone in the world very proud of you.
Thank you so much. And you're also doing so amazing. And I think every Palestinian, their contribution does something. And like I said, we're a team together. Without us working together and our cause, we none of us can be successful. With unity, we can get there. So I want to thank you as well. And you're always doing a great job.
That's the voice and the face of Miss Palestine, Miss Nadeen Ayoub, the first Palestinian to represent as a contestant in one of the world pageants, Miss World, Miss Universe, Miss International, and now Miss Earth. And she's a remarkable woman, Jamal, with a big and heavy responsibility on her shoulders, but very impressive.
Very impressive, very determined, very smart. She has a goal, and that's why she was crowned Miss Earth, Water, and her focus on the environment and sustainability. As you know, Jess, people don't know, but Palestinians lived off the land for decades and for centuries, and their entire life, and many of our viewers know the importance of olive oil, embroidery, which we call tatreez, water, farming, and so she tackles this absolutely in a very marvelous way. Moving on, Jess, 2020.
What a year.
Yeah,
what a year.
2022. I'm like stuck on 2020. I don't know. Maybe it's COVID.
Well, that's you're still pre-pandemic. But we've had almost 3 years of pandemic now. We're going into the 3rd year of the pandemic. That's obviously the big story. We're now moving into the 3rd year of the pandemic globally. We're seeing a resurgence in China right now, which changed its policy away from zero COVID to who cares about COVID. And as a result, tens of millions of Chinese nationals are being infected with COVID. The healthcare system is overrun in China. And Xi Jinping has, for whatever reason, done a 180 and completely opened up China now to a tremendous kind of exposure to COVID, which could result, Jamal, just for you and our listeners to know, new variants to spread globally right now. So It's also going to impact on one of the big stories of 2022, which is the economy. And, it's affecting the global supply chain. It's affecting many of the big corporate global, corporations like Apple and any global company that does, kind of business in tech. So I think we're going into 2023, at least from the China perspective, with China really weakened and economically vulnerable right now.
You're absolutely right. We have like so many stories to talk about, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them.
We won't.
And of course, we didn't put COVID as the number one, but we cannot ignore the elephant in the room, because it seems that a lot of people are ignoring the elephant in the room and want to be kind of like, they want to look at COVID in the rear view mirror. Where I am, I don't see anyone wearing masks.
Oh, really?
For one thing, like people, yeah, like it's life basically as pre-2020. And I don't think people want to think about it. So, but which we will talk about it actually, because it's still a major threat. But before we go there, Jess, I mean, of course, February 24th, which is basically 2 months into the year, Russia invaded Ukraine, leading, and I think this is a very big story, and it's still ongoing, leading to a global crisis for both. And we talked about that we dedicated a couple of shows on talking about this major crisis for food, energy, not to mention displacing millions of people, and there is no end in sight. I was watching President Zelensky coming to Washington, and the discussion, at least from what I read, what I saw, he's coming to get more support, more weapons, Patriot missiles. We're not talking about this peace talks, resolving the situation. So we're seeing like a prolonged war. I don't know what you think about this, Jess.
I think you're absolutely right, Jamal. And one of my unfortunate predictions for 2023 is that the global consequences of the war in Ukraine that Russia is waging now are going to get significantly worse. It's going to get worse for Ukrainians who are living, 90% of the country is, without power or very unstable power right now. There are food shortages. There are just massive destruction to infrastructure with no end in sight. The Russian economy is in free fall. People are leaving Russia. Russian men are being conscripted into the Russian military, and there's no sign that anything's going to change, except that Putin has remobilized his troops right now, and they're getting ready in the middle of winter when things are really devastating to launch another offensive. So I think 2023 is looking grim for Ukraine. It's looking grim for Russia, but it's looking grim for the global economy in terms of food and energy, especially oil right now, Jamal, and natural gas. So we can expect that the situation in Ukraine is only going to worsen for Ukrainians and for the world globally. I think this is going to be not just a big story, but a devastating story for the world.
Which really segues to the next big story, which is really inflation, just
global recession
and global recession,
right.
Which is basically, like, if you look at it, inflation has been unusually high in countries around the world now in 2022, and price increases in the United States. The US, it peaked at more than 9.1% in June and 11.1% in the UK, and similar numbers across Europe, or higher numbers, which is totally unusual. And as you said, 2023 is going to be worse. So I don't know how worse it's going to be when we're talking about almost an average of 10% inflation. And I read a tweet by President Biden just a few days ago saying hey, have you noticed that the price of gasoline is lower at the pump? And I'm like,
Who
you know,
cares? It's
not who
good,
cares.
but who
I
cares?
mean, it's good, but the average American spends less than 3% of his or her budget on gasoline. So what happens to the 97%, like your mortgage payment, your
Right.
food, your health care, etc.? I mean, what happens to this?
Well, you're exactly right, Jamal. And I think this is going to be a huge story next year, which is, it's the global economy. I mean, we're saying recession and inflation, but really what we're talking about is the global economy is in a steep decline right now. And there are many reasons for it. Obviously, the war in Ukraine is a big one, but supply chain issues because of the pandemic, realigning geopolitical interests like Russia, China, and Iran kind of realigning themselves. Things are changing rather dramatically just in terms of geopolitics and the supply chain in terms of the way things work because of globalization. We're now starting to see the downsides of globalization in terms of its impact. When one thing goes wrong, there's a domino effect, systemically throughout the system. So I think you're right. I think, my prediction for next year, despite Joe Biden's rosy kind of optimism about the reduction in gas prices are going to go back up. Russia just announced that they're going to cut supply again, which is going to increase the price. We have, as in the United States, has no friend in Saudi Arabia, that's for sure. So I think, unfortunately, for everyday people in the United States and for people globally who struggle every day just trying to make ends meet, 2023 is going to be really tough again, Jamal. And we'll be covering this story because it's not just the price of gas, as you said, it's the price of food, it's the price of everything that it costs to survive in the world right now. And we're going to take a big hit, unfortunately.
And staying with the U.S. politics, and since we're on that topic, I mean, would you have imagined in the year
that we would say this?
2022
I know
that the U.S. Supreme Court will overturn abortion rights? This is like,
well, but it's not just abortion rights, right, Jamal? I mean, there in the history of the United States, there is nowhere where the Supreme Court has taken away a right that was granted to a citizen of this country. So basically, if you look at the history of the Constitution in the United States, it's a evolution to grant people more constitutional rights, more protections over time. This is really the first time in the modern era where the Supreme Court has taken away a right of an individual, of more than half of the people living in the United States, who no longer have control over, who no longer have the ability to determine what goes in or out of their bodies, who controls their bodies. And, it's under the cover of this not crazy idea, but really kind of perverse idea that we don't have a constitutional right to decide what's right for our bodies. The states have the right. This is the whole dilemma, the whole kind of controversy versus federal rights versus state rights. And the Republicans are jumping on this to say states should decide everything, including voting rights, which is another thing that the Supreme Court is going to be deciding next year, 2023. My prediction for 2023 is that this extremist right-wing Supreme Court is going to get more extreme. There's going to be more attacks on rights. There's going to be attacks on women's rights. There's going to be attacks on voting rights, and there's going to be attacks on protecting the rights of people, communities of color and disadvantaged communities. So I think we're looking to some dramatic changes in the erosion of constitutional rights for 2023, Jamal.
So if you consider the basic right for a woman to choose, right, is taken away, and and would that define it under human rights? Because that's a human right that has been taken away. Can we still lecture the world on human rights?
Well, I don't know if we can lecture the world on anything these days, Jamal. When you look at the United States the way they've engaged in foreign policy, this will lead to our next kind of segment. If you look at the United States and how it supports rogues, despots, despotic rulers, and really kind of extremist regimes, whether it be the medieval state of Saudi Arabia, the medieval monarchy of Saudi Arabia, or the apartheid state of Israel, people are saying more and more, who is the United States to lecture to us about human rights when it continues to engage in a pattern of practice of taking away rights from its own citizens and supporting these rogue, despotic leaders. I mean, we'll get into it, Jamal, in terms of what's happening in the apartheid state of Israel. But I want to remind you and our listeners, 10 years ago, you and I were on a panel at the Commonwealth Club talking. It was over 10 years ago. I guess I'm dating ourselves now. We were invited to talk about the election of Benjamin Netanyahu and its implication for the world and for the Middle East. And I remember you and I being in the minority at the time, saying, "Hey, this is gonna uncover the true reality of the apartheid, racist, extremist nature of the apartheid state." And you and I took a lot of heat for saying that, because a lot of people said, "Oh, no, that's not true. It's a democracy. It has self-writing, abilities. It'll get the right course. It's our only democracy. It's our great ally. How could you say that?" Well, Jamal, a decade plus later, look at the government that gets elected: extremist, hateful, Islamophobic, racist. I mean, they're going to pass a law in the Israeli Knesset, Jamal, that's going to legalize incitement to violence against Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, and Palestinians who happen to have Israeli citizenship. It's going to be legal for an Israeli politician to incite to violence. So I think this is a huge story. Again,
exactly. This is one of our top stories for 2022, and it's actually also the story, which we should remind everyone, that Israel, for the first time ever, despite all the Hasbara and despite all the surrogates who try to whitewash its crimes, it has been certified as an apartheid state by its own human rights organization, B'Tselem, by Human Rights Watch, by the United Nations, by Amnesty International. So despite all of this denial, Israel is an apartheid state. That's by international standards, Jess. And now the new government is just adding, dotting the I's and whatever on this definition, but also the extremists that they are bringing. I'm not talking about extremists. I'm talking about terrorists. I'm talking about actually criminals by Israeli definition.
Well, that's right, Jamal.
Criminals by Israeli definition, not by our definition, not by the international definition. And now I want to see, how are they going to receive Ben Gvir in the United States? This is all, like, we're seeing a little bit of statements by the State Department and others saying, "Oh, they are dismayed," or whatever. But sooner or later, you're going to see Ben Gvir and others of his entourage entering the United States when they are blatantly racist, blatantly call for violence against Palestinians. And the laws that you are talking about, they've been implementing them. Just a couple of days ago, they deported to France a Palestinian human rights activist from Jerusalem, basically with, as Jerusalemites, Palestinian Jerusalemites hold Israeli IDs. They rejected his, this guy was born in Jerusalem, lived all his life in Jerusalem. They deported him to France.
Well, this goes to show you, Jamal, that what we've been talking about for decades now on Arab Talk, and trying to bring reality and to lift the kind of screen of denial that this country and the world political leaders have with the apartheid state, that screen, there's no screen anymore. You have Benjamin Netanyahu, who's been kind of charged with multiple felonies. He's kind of doing the Trump move. He's been reelected to forestall or to put on hold a lot of these charges that could send him and his wife to jail. But in order to do so, he had to cobble together a coalition of terrorists. I mean, there's no other way to call it. These are individuals who incite to violence. It's even worse than what happened in this country with Trump and January 6th. These are people who actively promote and advocate and get away with killing Palestinians, taking Palestinian land, destroying Palestinian livelihood by destroying olive trees and farmland. The illegal colonial settlers in the West Bank, approaching 1 million illegal colonial settlers, and the theft of Palestinian land is going to be codified now. In the past, they just got away with it. Now they're going to make it legal to be a terrorist. So you could be an Israeli terrorist legally now. Before you just got away with it. Now they're codifying it, making it into law. And Benjamin Netanyahu just said yesterday, one of the first things he's going to do is take away that law banning incitement to violence. So that's going to be one of the first things. The second thing he's going to do, Jamal, is annex the settlements in the West Bank, which is not just illegal, but criminal at an international level. So my prediction for 2023, unfortunately, it's the same prediction I give every year, Jamal, which is the United States will do nothing. Will do absolutely nothing. We'll let this rogue state get away literally with murder and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on this one. I haven't seen a single statement really
Nothing
that shows anything that the United States is going to do. And basically they have done nothing. They have done nothing on, here we go and condemn Russia for annexing parts of the Ukraine, and yet we turn a blind eye on the annexation of the Syrian Golan Heights and East Jerusalem and all these settlements. Trump moved the U.S. embassy into Jerusalem, and we don't see anything happening around that.
But Biden is letting it go forward, Jamal.
Yeah,
he's
letting
not stopping
it go forward, and which, by the way, which is another topic, it's being built on a stolen Palestinian land. And then they're saying, oh, we're going to just have the consulate. And they actually haven't even enforced that. They haven't even brought back the Jerusalem consulate. They just assigned a representative in Ramallah. Anyway, I'm sure we have a lot to talk about it.
But wait, I know, but I have one more prediction.
What is it?
Well, I have to make my Trump prediction for 2023, Jamal. Since I've been right for 6 years now, 7 years, I've been right on every prediction having to do with Donald Trump. Despite all of his economic problems, despite all of his legal problems, despite all of these, I predict that he will continue to be the presumptive 2024 nominee for the Republican Party. That I don't see anything stopping him.
Well, a nominee is different from making it. The presidency.
Yeah,
however,
I'll wait till 2024 on that one.
I'm gonna challenge you on this one. I predict, which I've lost last challenge, but I think I'm more predicting that he's gonna be indicted, and he will get indicted.
Yeah, I think that's true. He will get indicted, but it won't stop him.
Why not? I mean, I think that's gonna play a major role. Without the indictment, I will be with you 100%.
Well, here's the thing. An indictment is not a conviction. So you can get indicted. That's fine.
I think he will be indicted and he will be convicted. There is so much dirt coming out from his tax returns to all the shenanigans. And also Jared Kushner will be also indicted.
That I agree. Kushner will get indicted too.
So I think all these will come up sooner or later. It all depends on how fast the
Justice Department
Justice
can come
Department
through.
Exactly will work on this.
I'm not confident. So,
I mean,
but-
every page you turn is full of dirt. Every
Yeah.
single page on this file is full of dirt. So I don't know.
Well, I can't disagree with you, Jamal, but I have news for you that he will continue to be the presumptive, even if indicted, will continue to be the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party.
Well,
But-
everybody then in the United States should run for president and should pay zero taxes. You know,
$750 worth of taxes. Yeah, that's great.
show hundreds of millions of dollars of income, and then at the end of the day, show losses. Okay, and then make it to be
White
president
House.
of the United States. It's unbelievable. Anyway, our last focus, because we're running out of time, Jess, is and will be. It's actually two stories in one, which is really record-breaking heat waves and drought around the world.
Yeah, I mean, Jamal, this goes back to your interview with Miss Palestine, Earth and Water, because we are still, as a world community, in deep denial about climate change, about drought, and about the heat waves. But I'll just say climate change because, you know, you're in Europe right now, but what you missed in the last 2 days here in the United States is a record-breaking cold and snowstorm that just decimated the upper Midwest and the upper Northeast. You know, almost 30 people have died. Power is out. It's just devastating. And what people don't realize is that the new normal now is cataclysmic climate change, and we're seeing record melting of ice and snow in the Arctic in the north. We're seeing sea level, you know, changes that are just wiping out communities on the eastern seaboard, and at least here in California on the West Coast, unbelievable drought. And the Colorado River is at a point now where they may have to shut the Hoover Dam down because there's not enough water to keep it going. So we're, in my humble opinion, this may in fact be the big story for 2023. Not that these things are happening, but the fact that we're all in denial about how bad this is.
Just to add to the points you made, this past summer produced Europe's worst drought in 500 years, with 2/3 of the continent experiencing some sort of extreme heat warning. That's in Europe. In China, factories were forced to shut down in August due to decreased water levels around the Yangtze River basin, so which curbed electricity generation at hydropower plants. So, you know,
It's bad.
It's everywhere.
Well, but look at the famine in Africa right now. The drought is so bad in Africa, Jamal. You have millions of Africans in the East. You know, I mean, the tragedy is just unbelievable. And this is connected to the war in Ukraine too, because there's not enough grain to get to people who are starving. The people in Africa are starving because of the drought. I mean, it's all interconnected, obviously. But this, you know, because of this globalized system that we're in, it's going to affect all of us. And we just have to stop being in denial about how bad it is.
Especially when on November 15th, the world surpassed 8 billion people.
It's a lot of people, man. And I don't know how sustainable it is, to be honest.
You've been listening to, I should say, first of all, we want to wish all our listeners and viewers happy holidays and a happy new year, because next time we'll speak to them will be in
2023.
Yes. You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPO San Francisco 89.5 FM. Go to our website, arabtalkradio.com, to download the latest episodes, and we'll speak to you next year.
Speak to you next year.